In Somalia, systematic terrorist and clan persecution of humanitarian workers and representatives of vulnerable minorities continues. People are targeted and sentenced to death not for armed struggle, but for cooperation with international organizations like UNICEF and for working in child protection. This creates a constant, critically high threat for anyone who does not belong to powerful clans and is trying to restore a peaceful life in the country. In this episode, we will analyze why humanitarian work is equated with espionage in Somalia and how the complete lack of state protection makes the risk critically high for such individuals. We will examine why a person with this profile, a vulnerable minority member, an escapee from captivity, and having an open connection to UNICEF is forced to hide and what awaits him upon return. I base such analytical episodes on real client cases that face persecution in their home countries. My name is Maxim Karitonov and I am an expert witness focusing on human rights violations from London. Today's episode is dedicated to a case brought to our team, specifically to our lead East Africa witness expert who serves as a country expert by a major law firm. This firm represents a client who, after facing persecution in his home country, applied for asylum but was rejected after the first stage of review. Following such a rejection, applicants have the right to file an appeal in court, and law firms accompany this vital process. It is at the appeal preparation stage, when objective evidence of the situation in the applicant's home country is needed, that law firms most often approach us. Our work involves conducting in-depth research and preparing a country expert report. This report is designed to identify all real risks of return and to thoroughly substantiate the facts set out by the client in his asylum application to persuade the court of the necessity of granting international protection. The case concerns a Somali citizen who was kidnapped and declared a target by the Al-Shabaab group for his humanitarian work. His case is directly linked to the most serious fundamental human rights violations in Somalia, primarily the right to life and personal security, as well as the persecution of vulnerable minorities. My task as an expert is to conduct an in-depth investigation into the situation in the country and determine how this systematic terrorist threat might affect the client upon his return home. In this video, I will discuss what is happening to human rights in Somalia amid situations like the targeted terrorist persecution of humanitarian workers and severe clan discrimination. This is important, not only for those facing similar accusations, but for everyone applying for asylum who wants to understand what they might expect. I will also show how our company, Human Rights Experts, which I founded, conducts such research. We use only objective and verified sources to substantiate the findings that law firms use in presenting the client in court. Our Somalia expert worked on this case, and here is what we found. Somalia is one of the most dangerous places on the planet. Over 60% of civilian casualties annually are attributed to the terrorist group Al-Shabaab. These are not merely scattered gangs. The group controls significant territories, maintains an extensive network of informants, and essentially acts as a shadow state. Quote from the Human Rights Watch report: Al-Shabaab is responsible for numerous unlawful attacks which, along with inter-clan conflict, annually lead to the deaths of hundreds of civilians. Why did our client become a target to Al-Shabaab? Humanitarian work and aid, especially that connected to Western organizations like UNICEF, is viewed as Western interference and an undermining of their religious and political authority. UNICEF and educational programs are systemic targets because they offer an alternative to the group's ideology. We know that the most brutal attacks have been aimed specifically at staff working in child and education programs. The situation is doubly complicated for our client. His work with UNICEF and the Governmental Ministry of Internal Security is automatically equated with espionage for Western entities. But the critical, long-term and constant threat is created by the very fact of his escape from Al-Shabaab captivity. In their value system, this is classified as unforgivable betrayal. Such a person cannot simply hide. He remains a known, wanted and condemned target of persecution for years to come. And this threat is realized daily. Al-Shabaab is notorious for carrying out targeted assassinations, kidnappings and public executions. We are talking about a targeted and systematic pattern of attacks, specifically on workers associated with child protection and international organizations. The threat here is not hypothetical. It is based on documented bloody actions that clearly show what awaits our client upon return. In countries with strong legal systems, such as in Europe, measures against radical groups are undertaken in strict accordance with the law, and a citizen always has the right to protection from the police and the courts. But the situation in Somalia is different. The state is virtually unable to provide protection. Its institutions remain weak mechanisms. The army is fragmented into clan-based and foreign-trained units. The police are totally corrupt. And the NISA security service, which is supposed to fight terrorism, is partially infiltrated by Al-Shabaab militants. In fact, it is the state's weakness and corruption that allowed this group to exist and terrorize the population. This inability to protect its citizens leads to a direct violation of their fundamental human rights. Our client, like thousands of other Somalis, is deprived of the right to life and security. He was subjected to threats of murder, kidnapping, and violence. Militants practice torture, beatings, and public executions. And of course, the right to state protection is completely absent when the police and army are unable to provide real safety, especially to employees of international projects. His freedom to work in the humanitarian sphere becomes the basis for death sentences. Now, the legal aspect. Why can't he simply move to another city in Somalia? This is called the requirement for internal relocation, and in this case it is impossible. Al-Shabaab has an extensive network of informants throughout the country, and its threat is pervasive. Furthermore, our client belongs to the Asharaf Sarman clan, a vulnerable minority that lacks its own armed structures. In new regions, they will not receive clan protection and will be subjected to discrimination, which will only increase the danger. But before concluding, let me introduce myself to those who are not yet familiar with me. My name is Maxim Kharitonov. I am a country witness expert specializing in human rights violations. I personally also received political asylum. I am the founder of the Human Rights Experts. Since March 2022, we, a team composed of over 20 experts, have been creating expert reports for asylum applicants. Our expertise covers all key regions of the world, including Africa, Asia, Latin America, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East. Our expert reports, similar to the one we discussed today, are regularly commissioned by major law firms to help the court and authorities explain the specific country context of human rights violations in the applicant's country of origin, who are applying for asylum in the US, UK, Canada, and EU countries. If you are in the process of seeking asylum, remember, objective evidence confirming the risk of persecution is critically important for your case. The totality of all these factors work with UNICEF and state structures. Escape from captivity and belonging to an unprotected minority places him in the category of persons whom Al-Shabaab systematically persecutes long-term. The risk here is evident, and this is what justifies the necessity of granting him international protection. Thus, we see that the threat to our applicant is targeted, constant, and extremely severe. In Somalia, state protection is completely absent in both governmental and regional structures, and internal relocation is impossible due to the pervasive presence of Al-Shabaab and the discrimination against his clan. Humanitarian workers and UNICEF staff are among the group's main targets, and following his escape from captivity and known ties to international structures, our client falls into the category of persons whom Al-Shabaab systematically persecutes long-term. The conclusion is obvious. The applicant's return to Somalia means a real risk of murder, kidnapping, or torture, and therefore international protection is justified and necessary. That is all for today. Thank you for your attention. This was Maxim Kharitonov. See you in the next episode.